Hello, Internet. Welcome to another episode of That Random Podcast Show. The podcast show featuring two hosts in a van as they travel through a dystopian landscape, talking about pop culture stuff while trying to preserve what little is left of the old world, while we are being attacked by giant earthquake-causing crab monsters. Some of the face of Jack Nicholson for some reason. The nuclear radiation did stuff to them. We're not exactly sure how. I mean, we're not scientists. And then we eventually just sort of settled on the sidewalk somewhere and just, I don't know, drink whatever's left, I don't know, Gatorade or something. And then we just shoot the stuff here. And that's how we're recording right here. We managed to finagle together a ham radio. We're just blaring signals. Where am I again? Oh, right, the podcast show. I'm your host, Tyler Chansey, and with us, as always, is the guy who runs the channel, Michael Mosley.
What in the world are you going on about?
Crab Nicholson, the bringer of the end.
What
Don't you not know?
what are we
Crab
making?
Nicholson?
Waterworld 2?
I'm not saying a darn word. The Crab Nicholsons may hear us.
Right. Well, anyway, let's get on with this episode because you have a lot to say tonight, don't you?
Well, yeah, also, trivia fact, technically this was supposed to go up on April Fool's Day, but apparently we missed the window. But quite a bit has happened in between our times here at That Random Podcast Show. A lot of stuff seems to happen whenever we are not around. It's almost as if topicality is afraid of us because of how awesome
Well, I mean,
we are.
we took the week off, so like there's nothing wrong with that, but it just gives us more to talk about now.
Of course, we did do a lot of recording recently, and a lot of copyright stuff happened with some of our other spin-offs, like our review of Power Rangers. Don't worry, it'll go up eventually. We're working on it. And our recent episodes of Trailer Talk. But hey, we're back to the main show now. We still do some behind-the-scenes stuff. And as Michael said, we do have quite a lot to discuss. For instance, the return of Samurai Jack. For a lot of people, I know it's already been like over a month since Jack has returned, but we wanted to take a moment to look at the premiere episodes and have some time for them to digest so we can talk a bit more about them in depth other than, the surface level stuff that happens with certain dedicated fans to a beloved IP. Or, in more layman's terms, we didn't want the entire show to just turn into, oh my god, 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 oh my god. Too many other shows do that. We're a bit of a higher breed than that. I said a bit of a higher breed.
Man, you were freaking out about... No, you were freaking
marginal.
out and going on about Power Rangers.
So were you.
Oh,
You're not
I
guilty
never
in
said
this.
Hey, I'm the one who said that we do not...
You point the finger far more pointing back at you,
saying,
buddy.
Man, I'm not the one who said that we were highbrow or whatever.
We attempt to be highbrow. We mostly
Who's
fail, but
we?
we attempt. And that's what matters. The ghost in the jar. I still keep him around. I use him on you every now and then. It's okay, Adam. I'll feed you newspaper clippings later.
Well, this is not toenail clippings. So before we get too far into this whole Ghost of Adam deal, let's talk about Samurai Jack that I've been waiting for
Yes.
ever to see. 13 years actually, wasn't it? Like 12, 13 years, something like that, since we last seen Jack?
The last episode of Samurai Jack that aired on Cartoon Network was in 2004, so yeah, 13 years.
Man, 13 years. I was just a little one. I was a kid, like 15 when the show went off. Ugh, man.
It is frighteningly nostalgic. And for some of you people who don't know what Samurai Jack is, look it up on YouTube. There's a bunch of people that are already saying it. I'm not dedicating 10 minutes of the show to kind of bring it down. But if you really want the Cliff Notes version, mystical samurai tries to fight an ancient evil voiced by Mako. What's his face? Big battle happens. The samurai's about to win. Then the evil guy uses time magic, throws him into the future. A far future where the evil guy has already won, and so ancient samurai is stuck in crazy futuristic times with aliens with a magic sword, and is trying to find a way to get back home. Crazy action and hijinks ensue for about 90 episodes. And we never really got a final episode, never really got a final season, so to speak. There were talks about trying to get a movie out of production, but a lot of stuff happened in between that, everything from between poor box office sales of another animated series, discussion, creative differences. Sources are varied and difficult to really finalize, but ultimately it led to a 13-year drop of nothing. Until very recently, as of last month, it was the debut of a limited 10-episode run of a final season of Samurai Jack, and it was billed as being a more mature story because instead of being hampered by the standards and practices of Cartoon Network, it is being broadcast on Cartoon Network's Adult Swim, which is a show that has other shows on it that are pretty freaking graphic, like, I don't know, Mr. Pickles. Don't look at Mr. Pickles, please, people. I don't want to traumatize you. But let's just say it's a lot looser when it comes to certain things like excessive gore, mature themes, and the like. And yeah, and there are currently 3 episodes of this new season of Samurai Jack out. So, Michael, thoughts after seeing Jack
Should have
being
been
back?
4, but thanks a lot, Cartoon Network.
We'll get to it in a moment. Let's
Hey,
focus
it's
on the topic at
relevant.
hand.
It is very
Finish your
relevant. Thank you.
Finish your brownie, and then we can get to your damn Sunday.
All right, so I've been extremely happy about Jack being back. These last 3 episodes reminded me of why I enjoyed the show in the first place. It's well written, it's well animated, and
Well presented too.
yeah, very well paced. And it has that vibe of being able to tell a story, being mature, and also being humorous and childish.
Yes. Like, I was absolutely afraid that Samurai Jack was going to go the grim dark route. I've mentioned this several times, even in my own prose, about how I feel there's way too much pressure these days for certain nostalgic properties to become serious and gritty and devoid of humor in order to appeal to a fan base that has grown up. And I always find it to be tacky, because the promos for this new Samurai Jack showed him riding a motorcycle and in this, disheveled armor, and him using laser guns and these other weapons, and I kept thinking to myself, oh my god, this sounds like a 13-year-old thinking how he could hardcore up Samurai Jack, and I'm like, oh dear, this ain't gonna be good. But it's credit to the creator Genndy Tartakovsky, because it seems every single episode we've seen so far has been him delicately and masterfully sidestepping and addressing these darker issues and making it work. Like, you want to see how to do a mature update of a franchise? Look at what Tartakovsky and his team are doing with Samurai Jack.
Yeah, they're keeping the same vibe as the regular show, only this time they actually have Jack facing more flesh and blood enemies rather than cold steel and oil. And we've already seen how big of a difference that makes when it comes
much more credible threats.
Oh yeah, the tension is higher, and we even see Jack go through a bit of a change.
Yeah, I mean, back to episode 1, as I mentioned before, Jack, here's what impressed me though about the first episode. Like I said, they have Jack kind of go disheveled, and the show takes place 50 years after the events of the last season, so there's an even bigger time gap, and there's a lot of stuff that gets addressed. But they're going with Jack actually having PTSD and suffering with the idea of him failing his mission of returning home and defeating Aku. And as in terms of character, that actually made a whole lot of sense. In terms of his motivation, it makes a whole lot of sense. He's still moving, still trying to do right, but he hasn't lost all of his hope. But it's on a very thin wire. But then there's also a lot of humor with I'm not even joking here, people, a beatboxing, scatting robot assassin played by the voiced by Tom Kenny, the same guy who voices freaking SpongeBob. I'm not even joking. Look that up, and it's silly but also scary at the same time. But of course, the big showpiece of the new season is the characters you've mentioned, the Daughters of Aku, a sort of death cult to the ancient evil Aku, and they have trained from birth 7 deadly human assassins to go and kill Samurai Jack. And these assassins are freaking scary in the best possible way. Because as you said, due to standards and practices, Jack couldn't fight other human characters. It was always robots or cyborgs or something distinctly non-human. And then this show, they have 7 trained warriors going after him, and the details they have in episode 2 is where they first fight him, and they basically curb stomp him, which is a frightening thing to say out loud now that I'm thinking about it. And they work it out and they have Jack barely escaping or barely getting by, and they do it with no dialogue. They do it with no overly explanation stuff. It's just body language, movement, and you can somehow still figure out the thought processes of them. Because these characters, these assassins, they're not morons. These aren't guards or dumb or dumb brutes. These characters are methodical, lethal, and efficient. And that is what impressed me, especially with episode 2, and how Jack kind of finds a way to get a leg up on them in episode 3.
Yeah, it was, and that's what I was saying. Like the show still has the vibe of the old ones. Like because a few episodes in the original Samurai Jack had that same thing, where it was all told through body language and scenery, and even the way they transit between scenes. All of it told a story without having to use dialogue. Despite the point that they have Phil Lamar, who comes back, by the way, as Samurai Jack, and is still just as awesome as he was when he played it 13 plus years ago.
Oh yeah, and there is a small conceit, an idea that I'm hoping either gets addressed or slowly fades away, which is probably the closest thing to a complaint I actually do have about this series. I know, sacrilege, but hear me out. It is an instance that happens in episode 2 of this new season where Jack starts arguing with a projection of himself. And it's supposed to be, it looks like an ideal version of him, like his old self, still using the white gi, his hair still tied up, he's clean shaven, against this more ragged and beat down Jack. And it's a great scene because Lamar is basically arguing with himself, and they do play this to the hilt. And it's basically Jack's ideals contorted, and and at one point, I'm not even joking here, people. The scene makes it appear as if the Jack is actually considering harakiri, because he legitimately believes he has lost all hope of continuing, and the only way to retain his honor would be through a ritualistic suicide. And rugged, determined Jack says, "No, I find a way," and continues. And usually, whenever I see a hero argue with himself in this sort of abstract way, I keep telling myself it has to be addressed immediately or eventually subsided. You can't have that happen all the time. It makes the character seem too unhinged. It makes the character seem too out there, and it just comes off as odd. Although when it comes to a one-man show, this makes sense. Because then a similar thing happens in episode 3 where he is basically trying to nurse his near-fatal wounds, and the hallucination comes back, and it kind of drags the episode down because it just becomes more feral and more unhinged, and I'm afraid that might be more of a thing. Although it looks like, based on the arc that gets completed at the end of episode 3, that projection may not come back. And I'm hoping that's the case. You know what I'm talking about, right, Michael?
Well, yeah, I mean, we've only seen that projection once. But
twice.
Did it show up twice?
Once in episode 2 where he was like kind of normal, then once in episode 3 while he's bleeding out and he's all more exaggerated and he has the sharp teeth.
Yeah, and he's wondering how much longer you can keep this up and trying to get.
No. How much longer you keep this up as episode 2? Episode 3 was
because he was inside the messed up robot.
No, that was the messed up robot. That was episode 2. Episode 3 was him getting to that cave after.
While it was raining
across the river.
Oh hush! Okay, yes. Oh, how dare you argue with me about my show? Yes, my show.
How dare you argue with me? And we're arguing and wasting precious minutes talking about two scenes that.
Well, how dare you argue
Google
with me about arguing with you about this whole thing?
But I knew that you knew that I knew that you knew that I knew that you knew that I knew you would cheat.
But I knew that you would do the same thing. So thus, I am nipping this in the bud.
Can we have an image of that Jack versus Aku battle here in the video? Because I think that'd be appropriate right about now. But
I don't know. We'll see. But yes, but not only that projection, we might see that again, but also
I hope we don't. I really do.
Well, I do. I like to see Jack battle with himself with monologues.
I want to keep that more metaphorical, though. I don't want it to be just him again, because once again, I'm afraid that may actually sap some of his appeal. It's the grimdark problem once again.
No. It's just like we understand Jack's losing his mind, but also talking with himself may actually shows that he's still in control in some way, despite the point that he is slightly slipping mentally.
I kind of get that, kind of doing a sort of Mad Max sort of thing, but not really. No, I get
But
that.
what I'm interested in is the samurai on horseback that keeps showing up.
Oh yeah, there's been so many fan theories about this. Like they keep showing these scenes where Jack keeps seeing a projection of some sort of haunting samurai in ornate armor on sort of a spectral horse, and people have been speculating all over the place what that is. Maybe it was an enemy that kicked him with an inch of his life. It may be a personification of death or the invite of death, or maybe an old relative corrupted by Aku and maintained. We don't know. It's a very evocative and haunting and ominous image, though, that keeps popping up. And once we find the context for that, I bet a lot of stuff is going to fall into place. And I do enjoy that there's that level of intrigue and not everything is given to you, because I hate that about modern animation. People want they want to know now. They don't want to be kept waiting. There is no sense of pacing. Sometimes some shows just throw everything at you and say, there you go, and then you play around with them for a while, then it's all over. It's kind of depressing.
Oh no, it's very
But
well. I mean, this so far that we've seen this series, well, in this season, things might get a little depressing for Jack.
depressing, yes, but it hasn't gone to overly manipulative and try hard. Everything feels organic and makes sense, and everything seems to be presenting itself in a rational way. Like, as I said, like I've actually rejiggered my animation deviation columns on my blog to basically be reviews of these episodes, because there's a lot to unpack in these half-hour episodes,
Which I
and I
really,
love
yeah,
that.
which is what I really like because like you could think about those episodes after they air. It's like, man, how's it gonna lead to like only 10 episodes? This really seems like something that would take more than one season to explain. But
Yeah,
the way Gindi and his team set up these stories, yeah, they can probably set these things up within 10 episodes, and that makes me kind of sad because I already want more episodes. Like I want another season already.
I still find that amazing, because when the first episode finished, I'm like, oh my gosh, that was amazing, and it was only half an hour long. Oh
Yeah, and I
jeez,
gotta go through this nine
I,
more times and it's all over for good. No.
I need a cigarette, and I don't even smoke.
There's very few TV shows and movies and cartoons that can leave me hyped the way that Samurai Jack did. It's like,
hyped, hyped, and devastated, and
oh yeah, it's like I really wish it was like a Netflix thing so I can watch the whole thing at once because I didn't want to stop watching it.
oh my god, it's a very bingeable series.
Yeah, and I ended up buying the season pass on Amazon, so yeah, I'm gonna be watching it.
Keep them coming.
Yeah, I'm gonna be watching them over again after episode 10. I'm just gonna marathon all 10 episodes.
Beautiful. But we did bring this up. The show debuted about a month ago. That's 4 weeks. And we've only talking about 3 episodes. It's because this past Saturday was of course, April Fool's Day. And I think we've all kind of acclimatized to this simple fact. If you're going to be roaming the internet on April Fool's Day, you make it a habit to quadruple check all of your sources, because chances are there's at least one outlet there that's actively messing with you. And there were quite a few there. Stuff like George Takei declaring he was running for Senate. I'm not kidding about that one. I mean, he's not actually running for Senate. I'm not kidding. That was an actual prank that was done on April Fool's Day. CD Projekt Red decided to market a new figurine of the Witcher line, and it's Geralt's naked in a bath. I thought that was actually kind of funny. And everything, and just silly stuff like that. But then we found out that Dan Harmon and Justin Roiland, two very talented people behind the amazing series Rick and Morty, declared on April Fool's Day that, hey, tune in at 11 o'clock on Cartoon Network, because we're going to debut Rick and Morty Season 3 on there. For Rick and Morty fans, we've been waiting like a month and a half, 2 years for this premiere. And people kept thinking, April Fool's joke, Samurai Jack's coming on at 11. People tune in at 11 o'clock, and Rick and Morty Season 3 premiered. And the internet proceeded to explode with hype, excitement, jubilation, and mirth.
Hatred.
and hatred as well. It's the internet after all. It's schizophrenic
No,
like that.
look. I'm gonna say it now. I like Rick and Morty. I have the first 2 seasons on Amazon, of course. But oh my god, I was so set for new Samurai Jack that I was actually it was bittersweet. Okay, I was happy that oh my goodness, actually showing season 3 of Rick and Morty at the same time. This replaced Jack, so yeah, I was
I'm,
happy and
I'm,
mad at the same time.
I'm actually laughing. I'm like imagining you like sitting like cross-legged in like pajamas, like a giant ball of popcorn and a replica katana, like gotta get back to the past, Samurai Jack, and then the Rick and Morty theme plays, and you're like,
Well, the thing
betrayal.
the thing is, I wasn't even home Saturday because I had the season pass of Samurai Jack. It'll come up the next day, so I was gonna watch it Sunday just to
Like,
go.
yeah, I'll get to it
Yeah,
eventually.
just to go on Twitter because I was celebrating my mom's birthday Saturday, and I went on Twitter real quick because messaging and all that other crap.
Yeah, of
And I
course.
saw, I was like, oh, Rick and Morty season 3, and I was like, oh my goodness, what? That is the lamest April Fool's joke I've ever heard. But as I went down
I
my,
think it's pretty brilliant.
I mean, it was lame because how many times did we hear rumors of Rick and Morty season 3 happening? And not to mention, a couple weeks ago, you and I saw the YouTube video that Cartoon Network put up showing
Oh, the sneak
yeah,
peek.
showing a teaser. So I was like, okay, they're still animating, they're still actually finishing up. So I'm thinking summer or late 2017 is when we're gonna get Rick and Morty.
Give or
Early
take.
2018 at the latest. So I was like,
Yeah. All the signs pointed to still work in progress. They're just fleshing everything out, and then
yeah, and I was like, this is the lamest April Fool's joke ever. And as I went down my timeline, nope, people were like, oh, it's actually happening. It's a real thing. It's like, is everybody on this joke? This is really stupid. And I was like, okay, I'm curious. I'll check it out. And lo and behold, it was a real thing. And I was like, well, crap.
well, that's a thing. But Rick and Morty, we haven't really talked about it a whole lot on that random podcast
Well, I mean,
show.
granted, when the show started, the seasons were already over, and we were waiting on season 3 to actually happen.
Exactly, and there really wasn't so much we could get out of it, but it might just be the funniest and most and smartest written animated comedy I have seen in a very long time. Like for a while for me it was Futurama, but now Rick and Morty like just blew that show out of the water. Like it's beautiful. Like when you first watch it, it looks like it's just gonna be a riff on like Doc Brown and Marty McFly for Back to the Future, but instead of time travel, it's interdimensional travel, and Doc Brown is perpetually drunk, and Marty is his grandson Morty. I thought, oh, okay, that'll be worth a couple of yucks. But then the shows keep going, and every single episode manages to be like a parody or a lampoon or a satire of multiple movies, genres, critique, social commentary, all while being some of the most piss your pants funniest stuff I've heard and seen in a very long time. Like there was an entire episode of Rick and Morty that took the entirety of all three of the Purge movies, condensed it all into a single half hour, blazed through all the content of those movies while making fun of it, and made a very fun episode out of it at the same time. That kind of sharp writing I just don't see anymore. But it helps that, it's thanks to Dan Harmon, the creator community, and the host of the very popular podcast show Harmontown. Shout out.
Okay, so yeah, oh man, I can't really say a whole lot about Rick and Morty that I haven't said in the past. I mean, like,
it's practically a perfect show. We really
well, I
can't
mean,
say a
I
whole
wouldn't say
lot
it's a
about
perfect
it.
show. Like, it has a great cast, has great voice acting, and
Oh yeah.
even some of the more hateable characters are likable. And
Yeah, Jerry. I mean, he's basically a punching bag of the series, but you still kind of can't fully
oh
hate
no,
him.
man, 'cause the season finale of season 2, I was like Jerry, you suck, but at the same time, I understand why you did it, and any rational person would do the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, here's the other thing. Like, I've actually came across this recent concept recently. I actually messaged you about this. It's people. There are some people apparently that think that Rick and Morty actually perpetuate the idea of something called asshole propaganda, and for some reason, I'm actually not too fond of the concept. It's the idea that certain intellectual characters are given a free pass despite them being angry or hateful or or condescending and insulting to their peers and family because, well, darn it, they're just smart and capable, so might as well let them do what they want. And people always seem to aim at the likes of Sherlock Holmes, the more recent BBC Sherlock series, and as for Rick Sanchez, Rick and Morty. And it's a conceit that I can understand the logic behind, but honestly, I can't condone that to Rick and Morty, because this is another brilliant thing about this show. Asshole propaganda would be something like, let's say, House. People kind of, give him a free pass because, well, he does good work. But Rick and Morty goes further with it. They actually do show that while Rick Sanchez, by the show's own admission, is one of the smartest beings in the universe, and could do insanely amazing things, he's a miserable drunk. And people don't let him forget it. That he's a fundamentally broken character. And it actually leads some of the more surprisingly emotional beats in the past 2 seasons. And it leads to much more three-dimensional textured character than what could have easily just been a one-note Doc Brown riff. And I think that's what helps gives the show legs. Like, even people that are butts of jokes, like Jerry, you understand their motivations. You understand how they would behave. Like you said, the season 2 finale, which, spoilers, I guess, if you guys are familiar with it, it actually ends with Rick's family selling Rick out to the Galactic Federation because he's a criminal. He's done so much stuff, and he gets locked up, and the family gets protection from the Galactic community.
Well, in all technicality, they were talking about turning him in, but Rick turned himself in.
Do not ruin the moment.
No, too bad. You already yelled out spoilers, so it does not matter.
Darn it.
Yeah.
But yeah, season two ends with Rick being put into space jail and the family going to Earth with the Galactic Federation. And I kept thinking, oh dear. However, how are they going to do this? Is the entire season going to be, Morty, becoming a man and, going to rescue Rick and, stepping into his own while Rick has a moment to think to himself about what he's done with the world? Nope! Season 3's premiere is still some of the funniest stuff I've seen in my life and still some of the best written jokes ever and the best written pacing ever because, once again, this is the brilliance I like about Rick and Morty here. What could easily have taken another show 6 episodes or an entire season to deal with and hit all the emotional beats that needs to be hit, Rick and Morty hits in a single episode, and they make it look easy. Season 3 is no exception. By the time Season 3 ends, Rick is back with the family, status quo has been restored, kinda, and there's a bunch of Season 1 callbacks and payoffs that happen. And it still manages to be hilarious and fun. That is a lot harder than it sounds.
Oh yeah. Usually when you need a wrap up that big, it usually takes a few episodes. It maybe even a season finale.
I was expecting a multi-parter, but apparently, according to an interview, Dan Harmon said he didn't want to make the show serialized. He wanted there to be an overarching plot, but he wanted to keep things episodic, to keep it more accessible. And I do like that approach.
Oh yeah, especially since he doesn't want to go too far into Rick's backstory through the series. There's actually a rule within the writing room where they're not allowed to put too much of Rick's backstory into any episodes. So when we saw the whole thing with the portal gun and his wife, I was like, whoa, are they actually breaking the rules, actually doing this? And it's joke's on you. And I was like, damn it. But at the same time, I'm like, it's still his memories.
It leads to some of the best jokes ever in the series that Rick is an unknown entity.
Oh yeah, but they knew what they say.
All we really know about him. There's some truth to the memories, but like we said, all we really know about Rick Sanchez is he showed up showed up to the family out of nowhere, started hanging out in their garage, started going on adventures with Morty, using a spaceship and his portal gun, and everything else we know about him is that he fought in some sort of conflict with the galactic government, and now he's laying low. That's it. That's really all we know about him, and it's just as vague as it sounds. And yet they get some of the best character moments and beats out of it without really giving a whole lot away. as you kind of brought up, season 3 opens with Rick basically getting his brain scanned by the Federation because they want to get secrets from him. Like the whole portal gun thing. And there's an entire joke where he fabricates this entirely convoluted, this entirely emotionally devastating backstory about how he became who he is, and it was a giant middle finger and deception to the agents, and he used it to escape and led to some of the one of the best action sequences I've seen in a long time.
Oh man, yeah. When they showed the sneak peeks with Pickle Rick, I was like, oh, so this is where we're gonna get this. We're gonna get this in the first episode. Nope, 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 nope. Complete red herring so far, and it was
Yes,
way more awesome than Pickle Rick
yeah.
versus some rats.
I only just found Pickle Rick. Like, I didn't see any of the other promos. Like, I thought, oh, they're just gonna ignore the entire season finale and just be like, hey, look, it's Rick and Rick. He's a pickle now, Pickle Rick. I'm like, oh, that's so cute. Like, no, I didn't see any of that. So I've seen it now, which is just hilarious. Like, I didn't hear about Rick and Morty season 3's premiere until the day after, where I looked, because I said I put myself into media shutdown. I'm like, yeah, I'm not doing this. Came back in, it's like, what did I miss? Santa Maria. I missed something big with Rick and Morty, but also there's so much good that came out of this episode. Like, we got Nathan Fillion guest starring in the show, and he got a chance to do his best Rick Sanchez impression, and I want somebody to record that now and splice into a video or something, because I want that. That is great. We got a lot of closure involving the Galactic Federation. We got some great jokes and some great science fiction observations I liked about governments and economies, which was just great and used for satirical comedy. The Council of Ricks returned, which led to one of the best jokes that kept me cracking up. Deploy SEAL Team Ricks.
And I'm kind of sad about what happened to them, but at the same time, I was like, man, I really want to see more of this council. I want to see more of what they actually do to other universes, because, man, we've seen strike teams, we've seen officers, politicians. It's like we even saw a Morty in the background. We saw a Morty that looked like a Rick, and I was like, what? I want to see that universe. Like, he was by himself. So is that Morty? Is that a Morty in the future that grows up to be like Rick, or is that a universe where Morty's Rick and Rick is Morty?
I wouldn't be surprised. But you see, you have those sort of things. Then we have these off-color sort of jokes about a Morty asking if you want to see his Pog collection.
Well, they thought he was their lawyer, and hopefully this time. And they've also mentioned that Summer might actually be in it more often now.
Yeah, Summer may be in more often. Beth may be in it more often, because, as I said, the status quo has been changed in a way that it actually has opened the show up, and I'm actually okay with that.
Yeah, I want to see Summer go on more adventures with Rick and Morty, because when she freaks out, it seems a little more tangible than when Morty does it. Morty is more comical.
Oh, jeez,
Yeah,
Rick.
when Morty freaks out, it's more comical, but when Summer freaks out, it brings a little bit of tension into it.
It brings a little bit of tension to it, and it still has some of the funniest episodes, like Keep Summer Safe.
Oh man, I love
Remember?
that. And the way and
Yeah,
in the way Rick treats her is like, oh, it's all your fault, Summer. You and your boobs did this. My vehicle was just fine. It's like, it wasn't me. It's your stupid car. Don't blame my car on this. It's you and your stupid boobs always out. It's like, wow. I see you treat her just as bad you treat Morty.
Like I said before, Rick Sanchez is not technically a propagation of, I guess, asshole propaganda. The show recognizes he's a horrible person, and they actually get some comedy and some catharsis out of, punching him for it. Like I said before, there's so many references and shout-outs and takedowns of various sci-fi ideas, like the concepts of free will. Ghostbusters gets referenced a lot. The Purge I mentioned before. There's Raising the episode Raising Gazorb has a full-on an entire B story dedicated to Zardoz of all things, and it's just crazy how much creativity is in. And of course, we kind of already talked about some of the better sort of jokes of the episode: Pod Collection, SEAL Team Ricks, or, like I said, there was sort of a red herring where it looked like we were getting Rick's backstory about why he does what he does, and we got to see some bits and pieces of his past, although they're all very incoherent and kind of all over the place, which is part of the joke. But the episode ends in a bookending kind of way where they replicate the finale of season one, and Rick makes it perfectly clear that the reason why he's doing all this crazy stuff he wants to do is because he wants more of the promotional Szechuan teriyaki dipping sauce that was made for McDonald's for McNuggets.
For the Mulan.
That was promotional for Mulan, and he thought it was so freaking good, and he's been trying to find a way to get more of that exact good freaking tasting dipping sauce.
All that for the Mulan promotional dipping sauce. And they did a whole joke on that. It actually became a running joke, a bit of a running joke in that episode.
And he ranted about it. And Morty's like, "What are you talking about?" And I'm too busy on the floor laughing my butt off because I was around when they were promoting that dipping sauce promotion, and I remember actually how addictive that sauce was.
See, I never had it, or at least I don't remember it. But I mean, man, see, that's what I'm talking about. Like this, that's why I enjoy the show. It's like you think you caught up with it. You think, okay, there's not much else they can do. We know all these characters.
This was all in half hour of television, people.
Like Rick's escape, setting everything back up, getting back to Earth, probably adding in Summer to the mix. We even got they even did a callback to the universe, to certain universes from season 1 and 2.
Oh my gosh! The entire season one, all the season one callbacks were just great. Like we got to go back to Cronenberg land.
Yeah, we went back there.
I love that we just say that casually. People know what we're talking about. We went back to Cronenberg land.
They did that. Yeah, and we actually see what happened to everybody there. We see what happened to Morty's original family,
it's pretty messed up.
Oh yeah, it's really messed up. And we actually see that Morty remembers these. We know he remembers his name, but we actually know what Morty this one is because we've actually changed a couple Mortys, and seeing this Morty go back. It seems like he knows how to use Rick's portal gun.
I noticed that. That's actually been a bit of payoff in the past few seasons because despite Rick can easily just be an unfeeling jerk, he does clearly care about his family. And there was episodes where he taught Morty how to fly the ship. Morty kind of figured out how to use the portal gun, and I like how they've been paying that off.
Yeah, they've been Morty has been really stepping up, man. It's like we've seen Morty use a few of Rick's gadgets. We've even seen Summer use a couple of them.
Yep.
And if she's really going to join the adventures this season, yeah, I can't wait to see what else Rick pulls out of his lab coat, because
it'll be fun to see how they handle it. I mean,
yeah, because I want to see Morty continue to change up, because there's something that you want to see the characters progress. Well, I mean, not just progress. It's mostly Morty, because he's starting to become a little more on edge, and he's becoming a little more hectic. Like when he did a certain thing to Rick that Rick needed him to do for a plan.
Oh my god, that standoff was comedy and tension gold.
It was great, and seeing Morty get that way a little easier than he did in the Purge parody episode. It's like,
I love how they basically kind of rationalize that as being kind of a callback to the Purge episode.
Yeah. Like, and seeing Morty become a little more unhinged by this, I'm like, well, this is really starting to take oh yeah, like you can tell, like, this is really taking a toll on Morty. And I want to see what other messed up things that happened to him this season.
Oh, absolutely. That's like half the fun, seeing the nonsense they get up to. I mean, there was an episode where Morty got sexually harassed by a talking jelly bean. I'm not even joking. That's actually in season 1. It's pretty messed up.
Oh man, tell him a new one. Morty just beat the living daylights out of that guy.
Yeah,
King Jellybean,
and nobody cared because sick man. But Rick and Morty season 3, I loved it. The problem is I can't find a place where I can reliably rewatch it because I want to just marathon it and just burn it into my psyche, but I can't as of right now. And I know I'm not going to get any more episodes for at least 2 or 3 more months.
Yeah, the rest of the episodes won't come out until the summer.
And that is a pain. Although bravo to the marketing team for this, because it shows they know their audience, you know?
And it shows that whoever's doing marketing for Adult Swim, they know what they're doing because they always find new ways to screw with people and just have
Oh my
fun
gosh,
with their
yes.
marketing.
Yes. Okay, now, my reason for why I didn't see Samurai Jack or Rick and Morty's premiere on Saturday was because I've gotten the privilege of getting an advanced copy of an upcoming JRPG published by the lovely and talented people over at Atlas. And for those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, be quiet, I'm getting to it. It's because I've been playing extensively for the sake of a written review for the Game Fanatics, a copy of Persona 5 for the PlayStation 4. As of this recording, I'm still bound in some respects by a non-disclosure agreement and embargo qualifications by the PR people over at Atlas. Therefore, I can only speak so much about Persona 5. But by the time the show goes up, the game should be out to the public. But of course, Persona 5 is a very narrative-focused game, and as such, I will be keeping my discussion about the game spoiler light. I can talk about certain instances past the first major dungeon. Otherwise, I'm just gonna leave little bits and pieces for you here and there, as you do. So, but first things first, for contrast, I guess. Michael, what is your experience and opinion on Atlas's Persona games?
I am like really late to the party, like Persona 4 Golden late. That was my
Golden.
yeah. Like I played Ten Mega. Oh my goodness. I know.
Shin Megami
Yes,
Tensei.
thank you. Shin Megami Tensei in the past. And I've always heard about Persona being a great game, but I never got into it until Persona 4 Golden came out, and I ended up getting that on my PSP. Wait, yeah, I got it.
PS
Yeah, I
Vita.
got it on my gosh, I got it on my PS Vita, and I enjoyed it tremendously. And I cursed myself for not getting into the series sooner because I heard that 3 and 2 were better than 4, but 4 was still a wonderful game and a great way to step into the Persona series. And I'm excited
It's a very good.
yeah, and I'm very excited for Persona 5.
Okay, that's good to know. I have a bit of a different experience. I was kind of late to the party, same as you, but it was because I heard about the reputation by a few other friends of mine that are complete masochists. I'm just going to be very straight up here. Total masochists. They love the Persona games. They've loved the Shin Megami Tensei main series. Persona is a spin-off of them. And they seem to love anything that's made by Atlas, because Atlas RPGs are known for one big thing, and it is their difficulty. The kind of difficulty that makes even ardent RPG veterans like myself maybe make them want to grit their teeth, throw the controller out the window, and then run outside and light something on fire. They are known for being pretty unforgiving with their combat and what they expect out of the player. And the reputation, I heard you should check this out. So I chewed a bit here on Persona 3 when it was available digitally for the PS3, and I didn't like that I couldn't control my party members. I had to rely on AI, and I didn't want to do that, so that was my barrier to that for a while. But then Persona 3 Portable for the PSP was released, and I downloaded that on my Vita, and they added that as a feature. And I'm like, okay, I can get back into this, because I'm kind of a neurotic like that. I like to micromanage, so I was able to kind of get into that. But same as you, my introduction actually was me getting a copy of Persona 4 for the PS2 on my old PS2, and I actually plugged it in, set aside my Wii, set aside my PS3, and just the PS2 was a Persona machine at that point. I just wanted to play Persona 4, and I loved it so much that I double dipped and got Persona 4 the Golden on my Vita, because I wanted to see how much more they added to it. Because the Golden was a re-release, and they added more characters and more stuff on top of it, and I just wanted more of that world. And it's a very surprisingly addictive franchise, even though when it comes to a straightforward plot or basic stuff, they are really hard to kind of summarize. But for those of you that don't know, dear listeners, buckle up. The basic conceit of the Persona games is it's a JRPG. It's a very Japanese JRPG. Anime cutscenes, Japanese styling, all that big stuff. It is unabashedly Japanese and proud of it. And the most basic way to describe these plots is you spend your time as a high school student that's in this one section of Japan. It's either in the boonies, in some sort of city, somewhere. And you're in high school, you're coming into a new school, and you're spending a year of your time in this world. A year in the context of the game, not a year real time. That would just be too large of a commitment. But you spend a year in this world, and the conceit of the game is that half the game is basically daytime minutia and daytime drama, making sure you study for your exams, getting a part-time job, socializing with people, and getting to know their various hang-ups and problems. Because high school angst and emotions run high, and tensions run high, and expectations run high, and it's Japan, and Japanese culture is ridiculous, and I do mean that in a firm sense, not in a "oh, Japan, you so ridiculous." No, I mean seriously. It's some pretty problematic stuff. But then the second half is what I like to call the acid trip parts, because usually an inciting incident happens in the world where the status quo gets thrown out the window. People, I don't know, start dying, or mysterious murders start happening, or people start acting surprisingly out of character, and you and your classmates become involved in these scenarios, and go into some sort of other world. Some sort of bizarro world that's kind of in line with the real world. And from there, basic JRPG dungeon crawling and combat happens there, where you fight these messed up creatures and have these intense boss battles that have an effect on the real world, all while using your personas, which are kind of like the stands from JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, or kind of like Pokemon, if you will, where you basically collect them and can combine them together to make more powerful personas, and it's just so much JRPG crunch with various weaknesses, strengths, nullifications, like 16 different attack types, physical attack types, elemental types. If you really like your JRPG crunch to be almost incomprehensible nonsense, you will dig the hell out of these series. But what gets people still talking about them isn't just the freaking hard combat, it's the good pacing, it's the good characters, the good stories that comes out of this. Like, I'm going to be very clear here. I cannot stand slice of life anime. There's maybe one or two in my life that I've seen start to finish, and they've resonated with me on a personal level, but they were short and to the point. Otherwise, I can't stand them. I can't stand how they go on for too long, because I don't care. I'm too cold of a person sometimes. I don't like how characters go on and on about this. Are they going to kiss? Are they not going to kiss? I don't care. But Persona does such a good job presenting these characters as real and their conflicts as problematic that you do care. And it also helps that it's usually tied to, usually more gamified stuff, like boss battles. I mean, it's something impressive and something beautiful that they can do that. In fact, the biggest claim to fame of Persona 4 was there was an entire boss battle that was a manifestation of a certain character coming to terms with his sexuality. And it was a big deal. You know the one I'm talking about, Michael.
Of course, he's one of my favorite characters in Persona 4.
Kanji Tatsumi. Oh, how do they Oh, you mean they're like subtle about it and like he kind of looks effeminate? No, I mean the boss battle is literally an 8-foot-tall muscle man with rose petals around his neck while holding two giant male symbols.
And you know what? That was still one of my favorite parts of that game. I was like, if you're gonna do a character like that, yeah, I can accept this. This is great. And it was a fun battle.
It's an exaggerated giant, like, that's the big thing I like about Persona. They do a lot of good environmental stuff and take advantage of their bizarro world for exaggerated, stylized designs, where any other franchise, it would be on the nose and pretentious as hell, but through this lens, they can be exaggerated, because then they can pull it back to the real world, where they still deal with it. It's almost like it's a bad dream, and still have to come to terms with it, and they come to it in a much more subtle manner. And as such, these games are very dialogue-heavy. But usually they're written so well you don't mind that, which is a very hard trick to pull off.
Yeah. So, okay, my question is, in Persona 5, from what you've seen so far, how are the characters, especially compared to the wonderful characters with their different personalities in Persona 4?
Okay, yeah, I'm sorry for the front-loading people, because I bring all this up because I'm a big fan of Persona. I like what it does. I love they've basically made a name for themselves with this. I feel as if the first impressions of Persona 5 didn't get on the right foot. Okay, now put the guns down, put the pitchforks down, people, please hear me out. The Persona games have always been slow boils because, like I said before, it starts with basic, school minutia, simple stuff before the fantastic happens. Persona 5 somehow manages to try to get the pacing going right off the bat with it starting in medias res, but then cuts back to when things began. And believe it or not, I'm actually not against the structure. It's just it becomes anchored to a pretty bad framing device that it's very hackneyed, that keeps dragging out the pacing. Like, not getting into particulars again, but how long would you say it took for you to realize what was happening, what the big overarching method and formula of Persona 4 was going to be? How long did it take you in game time? Like 3 hours, give or
Yeah,
take?
about 3 to 5 hours after going through tutorials and talking to people and searching around the areas for secrets and whatnot.
It took me about 8 hours
Oh,
in Persona 5 to basically get to the first initial dungeon and getting to where I can actually do some dungeon crawling and some fighting. I wish I was joking, but it took about that long to get there and get to where I can actually clear the dungeon and actually get around and go through the first dungeon. And yeah, it's a big problem. First impressions were not good. Like I said before, the game opens with you like in medias res. You're already in a dungeon. It's your combat tutorial, which I thought, oh good, they're going to streamline that and keep it simple. But then a cutscene happens, something happens to your character. You put in your own name, and then it cuts back to the start, to the beginning of everything. But then it keeps cutting back to where you were before, and they use that as a framing device in order to telegraph what's going to happen next in the past. And I feel that robs the plot of predictability. Like, and it comes with the issues I do have somewhat. I mean, it makes sense with the genre Persona 5 is trying to be. Like, despite how bizarre made the series sound, they usually follow a certain template to it. Like, Persona 4 was kind of a murder mystery because it dealt with a small town and mysterious murders happening, and the murder in question was using this other world in some way. Persona 3 was kind of a supernatural horror story about the Dark Hour, about this weird temporal time and dimension in between time, and people dying or becoming monstrous because of it. Persona 5 actually themes itself around actually kind of a heist movie, a heist scenario, because the party members all have masks on whenever they're in the other world, and the levels in the dungeons are framed like pulling off a heist, like you're infiltrating a place in order to steal some sort of treasure. And the framing device is your character is in an interrogation room where something has gone wrong further down the line. But I'm like, okay, that could potentially lead to tension if you keep the framing device to a minimum, like only use it here and there. But within, like I said, about 20 hours into this game, and the cutscene and it keeps cutting back to the framing device almost every other hour when it comes to story beats. Whenever you get a new social link, cuts back. Whenever you finish a major story beat and you think you can take it some time to relax, cuts back. And it's amazing how something as simple as like 20-30 second long cutscenes can drag a pacing of a game to a crawl.
oh wow. Well, okay, so it has pacing issues, but do you think that'll be resolved after those 8 hours? Like you've gotten past that point. Like, does it actually get resolved?
Yes. Well, as I said before, I'm starting to kind of get into the rhythm it's going for, but I was expecting something a lot more expedient, which is strange because usually when you think of heist stories, they usually take their time. But at the same time, I am always worried about how that's being handled. Like, okay, it still leads to a lot of padding and a lot of problems with it. Like, for instance, since the game has a framing device where you're basically being grilled and you're like, okay, how did you get to this point? And it flashes back. I'm thinking, okay, that means the cutscenes and the story beats have to focus on you because if it goes to some other person's perspective, how would you know about it, right?
Okay.
How could you comment on that? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it's like if it's a framing device where you're recalling to another character what happened to you, you wouldn't have scenes where you would cut to a scene where two other characters you don't know about are talking. Persona 5 does that.
Hmm.
Like, if they took out the framing device, if you could somehow mentally cut out the framing device cutscenes, this would be a much more coherent plot and much more interesting. I wouldn't say coherent, I mean it would flow better. The framing device feels like it anchors the game down. But that's a nitpick. It's a major nitpick because it keeps popping up. It's that little annoyance that's very prominent. That's an issue. But you want to know more about the characters because this is a character-focused piece. It is an ensemble
Right,
piece.
and the characters are what makes Persona so much fun.
Exactly. I actually do think there is some merit to what happens with your player avatar this time around. Because Persona 3, actually all the Persona games, to an extent, usually have your character be a very milquetoast, bland, unimaginative character because it's a player avatar, and they even have stats where you can actually like sort of boost up your character's likability, so you feel like you're making progression in the world. But they usually keep it very basic. It's like, oh, you moved here recently, or you're being taken in by a caregiver because your parents are moving around or something. Some sort of nebulous but kind of mundane thing. Once again, no major spoilers, but they actually have it be, for this game, your character has a criminal record and you're on probation for a year in this world.
Nice.
And so all the stuff with you, putting together heists in another world has a level of tension to it because, oh no, I hope we don't get caught. It continues with this fun theme of crime, criminality, and law and justice, and I do like those themes. Those are actually fun to deal with, because it also deals with prejudice and media narrative. Like, there's some good stuff here. There's some really good stuff here with how it handles it. Like students at the school don't like you at first. They're like, oh dear, we heard about you, rumors. We don't want to talk to you. Sort of situations. But then here's the thing. But you're trying to be an amiable person. But then meanwhile, when you go to the nighttime sequences, you're basically putting together an Ocean's 11 style heist to steal treasure from some deformed shadow being or something. Once again, keeping it nebulous. And it leads to a good, coherent, holistic theme, and I think Persona 5 does that so very well. But I bring that up because the main cast took me a lot longer than I would have in order to get to like. Like, Yosuke Hanamura from Persona 4, kind of a goofball, kind of a bonehead, but you liked him, You kind of got an idea of what he was about, And he wasn't an idiot. Like, Kanji Tatsumi, kind of a hardhead, kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Not exactly the brightest guy around, but he means well. That's texture. The first major character I bumped into was kind of doing the kanji thing, and the problem is he was also kind of dull, and it led to a much longer bit of exposition than I would have liked regarding how the distorted world works, or the metaverse, I think they call it, and it once again leads to some pacing issues. The blonde girl, An Takamaki, I liked. I actually enjoyed her thing. Her stuff is tied to the first dungeon, the first major boss, so I can't really say a whole lot, but once you get past that, she actually has some good lines and some good humor to her. And of course, the new mascot character, which everybody's kind of seen, is the cat, Morgana, who, for me, kind of stole the show for the first dungeon. Which is weird, because he was mostly the exposition machine. He was the mouthpiece, like, oh, these are your personas. This is the metaverse. Here's how this thing works. Here's how this thing works. Here's how we have to do this. And I'm like, okay, this character knows what's going on. But then, what's his face is like, I don't get it, for like the 17th time. I'm like, oh, for heaven's sake.
No, I mean, that's a lot of JRPGs that do that. They always tend to treat their audience like they're a little slow, so they always repeat a lot of stuff. They always have that one or two characters that don't know what's going on, even though you just explained it to them.
Metal Gear. Metal Gear. Metal Gear. Metal Gear.
Yeah, it happens like in every JRPG. So yeah, I can believe that's gonna happen.
Yeah, but to the extent of like 6-7 hours, it feels as if certain scenes could have been cut, or certain things could have been left down, or certain things could have been not elaborated on. But as I said, once you actually get to the combat, the stuff is good. Like the combat is still a whole lot of fun. It's still rewarding. It's still punishing. It will still kick your butt. And it will still, like the first dungeon, I actually had two party wipes. I actually, got screwed over by RNG and had my entire party just annihilated twice. The second boss battle, I actually had five party wipes on the boss battle on the second dungeon. I'm playing on normal, by the way.
So it's gone back to being just brutal, just like
Well, really, all the Persona games have always been
yeah,
like
yeah, that's
that.
what I'm
But
saying.
they
Like,
give you,
well, apparently Persona 4, from what I've heard, was the easiest of them all.
well, I actually have to say yes because it seems a lot of the stuff that was in Persona 3 they brought back for Persona 5. Like, there's more status ailments, and there's more attack types now. Like, it isn't just fire, wind, all the other ones. There's also psychic damage. There's also omega damage. There's curse damage. It isn't just a win button. There's yeah, they've added a whole lot more. There's also new item types. There's new status ailments. There's new like I told you guys before. This is a dense series, very dense, and there's a lot to unpack. And I do like that. I really do, and I do enjoy how they balance it. But then it leads to scenarios where it's very obvious the game just wants to kick your butts and make and kind of it never feels unfair. But there are moments where I think the RNG is conspiring against me because, well, it's me. My friends in D&D and I can always test this. That my luck is always out to kill me. Because I actually had a scenario where a boss battle wiped my entire team because I got three critical hits in a row and then hit my last character with an elemental weakness
Yeah, see, that sounds pretty busy.
on a regular. I'm not gonna lie, busy is kind of Persona 5's entire style. Like, I'm not even joking. The multiple pause menus and transition menus are very stylized. This game oozes style. This game has a very good art direction. Has a very fun art
Yeah,
direction.
I saw a GIF of one of the combats, and it looked super hectic, and it made me even more excited, even though I didn't know what was going on.
Well, that's the thing I can say. Like the controls are a bit different, but there's more options. Like there's actually a thing that I did like. They actually brought back negotiation from Shin Megami Tensei, which I didn't think I'd see in a Persona game. Like in regular Persona games, whenever you hit an enemy with their weakness or hit them with a critical attack, they get knocked out, and you get another turn to encourage you to exploit that. And if you knock down all of the enemies, you can call in an all-out attack, where your party just sort of runs in and moshes them, which is a fun thing to do. It's always good. It's always fun to see that kind of death-shaped storm cloud when it's all over. You know what I'm talking about, Michael?
Yeah,
Well, here's the thing. In addition to all that, there's a new method called talk, because you're basically holding up these enemies with these weapons because you're thieves. Why not hold them up? And you can choose to talk to any of the shadows you're speaking to, and you can choose to either let them go if you like give them if they give you like money or a random item, which is a fun kind of way to kind of grind for materials if you need them, or you can convince the shadow to join your list of personas, because the shadows in this game are also personas you can use. They actually kept that, and it leads to a negotiation mini game where they give you questions, you have to answer them, and you have to answer their questions in a way that they find you amiable, to which they'll join your party, and then you can use the personas however you wish. Because, as I said before, I wasn't even joking when I said this is kind of like Pokemon, because you do have a list of personas you can call upon it switch at will, and even combine together to make more powerful personas. But the twist with this one is they brought back a similar thing with Shin Megami Tensei, where you want new personas, you have to convince them to join you first. And it actually leads to some more dynamic stuff, because certain shadows will actually leave you alone if you actually have a copy of themselves in your party, so you can like end fights quicker, or you can use that knowledge to better defeat them, or like once again, Atlas knows how to, whenever they add a new element to a game, they don't just make anything that directly benefits the player or the enemy. And sometimes that makes it frustrating to play, but it also makes it immensely rewarding when the numbers roll in your direction. And I like how they brought back this negotiation system. And that does lead me to actually one of the better things I can say about Persona 5. The dungeon design is amazing.
No, because
I
usually one of the things I hate was the map in it. The map system is usually pretty bad. So how's the dungeon? How did the dungeons map design actually work this time around?
Well, believe it or not, it was actually kind of I was my mind was actually blown when I did the first dungeon, because most of the dungeons from Persona 4 and 3 I mostly remember for the boss battles and the mini bosses and the grind I had to do up to that point, because otherwise the prior dungeons were just various levels of randomly generated corridors and rooms and staircases. You sweep a floor, you clear it out of shadows, you search for loot, and then you go up another floor and you rinse repeat until you get to the boss. And it became an endurance test as to how far you could manage your health and your spirit energy in order to get up to the top, which was fine if you're like grinding, you know. And for the record, this is actually why I think the Persona games actually work pretty well on handhelds, because of that sort of, easily digestible level grind tastic stuff it does with that dungeon design. Persona 5 doesn't have that. Every single dungeon actually feels like a massive coherent building, and the shadows are actually manifested as the equivalent of guards in that world. And there's platforming. There's like these contextual areas where you can climb up walls or climb through ventilation shafts, or had to slip through like traps or tripwires in order to get around. In addition to fighting these shadows, and the objectives involves you trying to find a map or find a way to figure out where the big treasure you're after is hidden in order to get there and take it. And it feels coherent. This doesn't feel like we can get through these 5 floors of interchangeable, homogeneous, interminable rooms. We'll get to the big boss and take care of him. It's like no, we have to go through the atrium. Now we have to take a left corridor here. Now we can reconvene here at the safe room we figured out. We can stock there, and then we can. Oh great! Now we gotta go downstairs and shut the power off here so we can get through this thing. I'm spitballing, by the way. This is not from any of the dungeons. I'm just giving you guys an idea. And like I said, there actually are these safe rooms you can find in the dungeon where you could fast travel to them if you have to leave or bail out, so you don't feel like you have to go to all these places again. And there's good puzzle design. There's key hunting again. I thought I was actually sick of key hunting. No, this game actually does key hunting pretty well, and the shadow enemies are still difficult to deal with. But the game also has a pseudo stealth system where you actually can hide and cover and jump and dash between bits of cover, because there's a stealth mechanic now to the game. Because if the shadows find you, the overall alertness of the dungeon goes up, and the higher it goes, the more dangerous the shadows become, because they're reacting to intruders. And if it ever hits 100%, you basically have to run for your life, because then every shadow in the dungeon basically turns into a mini boss, keeping with this thief aesthetic. But the thing is that if you stay hidden and just go to ambush these shadows, that alertness goes down, and it's actually a lot harder to get seen than I'm making it sound, because I have never had the detection system go past 20% ever. I've just gotten lucky, or I was able to kill the shadow before it could call an alarm. Like, this is surprisingly pretty decent stealth. Like, if one shadow spots you, have maybe 2 seconds to go after him before whatever. But also, you can ambush these shadows and take them out. And if they don't spot you, you can you get the the one extra turn because you take them unawares, and nothing will happen. It's much more involving than just these rinse and repeat grinds, floors. And it makes the dungeon actually much more applicable to environmental storytelling, which once again Atlas is good at, because as I said before, these dungeons are exaggerated looks into the psyche of whoever is involved, which Persona 4 did, and what they did here in Persona 5. Like, there's a character in the first dungeon who is obsessed, who's a coach, a sports coach, and the visual design of this sort of castle you're in has various sort of glorified looks of soccer trophies, or students in school uniforms being tortured horribly for some reason, and it's a look into the sort of warped mirror of this person's look, and it sells a whole lot more because it isn't just bits of dialogue or bits of flowery text. It's like, no, you get to see the stuff. You get to interact with the stuff. You get to infiltrate the stuff and see more of it. And from a design perspective, both environmental and art direction wise, Atlas knocked it out of the damn park, as far as I'm concerned.
All right, so sounds like you're enjoying it so far. You lucky, so and so. I have. I'm gonna have to wait until release, which by the time this podcast comes out, it'll already be out.
It's a very slow boil. Probably the slowest boil of any JRPG I've played in a while, and I've been playing through some.
Wait, even Final Fantasy 13?
Okay, I have not played Final Fantasy 13, but now that you're bringing it up, it's probably not the worst.
All right, so you're actually doing a review for it, right?
I am.
So
I will be writing a review for it for thegamefanatics.com. The game will be coming out on the 4th, embargo lifted as of this recording, as of last Tuesday, but my review copy came in around Friday because sometimes this sort of stuff just happens. So, expect that review will be available to read at thegamefanatics.com. As I said, this is a first impressions, a 20-hour in-depth first impressions. Has some good, has some bad. Hopefully it sticks together. But yeah, when that comes live, you can check out the review at thegamefanatics.com. However, if you want to pick more of my brain, more of my my literary dropping, so to speak, you can also check out my blog, my little digital watering hole away from the weirdness of the internet for my own special brand of weirdness, cybertavern.blogspot.com. You may also follow me on Twitter at Darth Rahu, capital D, capital R, all one word. Michael, where can we follow you?
You can, of course, find me on Twitter at M_MOSLEY_JR. Or if for some strange reason you can't find me there, you can find me with a Twitter handler with Zafmod, ZAFMOD. And I don't care about my blog anymore. It's just a thing now.
You weak-willed son of a gun.
Yeah, I got better things to do. Like editing 6 videos within a week.
Love you,
yeah,
baby.
I'm sure.
Take care, everybody.
I'm gonna go take a shit.
Yeah.